Shalom, shalom lekulam. Today we're continuing with the valuable vav. And as we mentioned last time, and as you probably already know, the vav as a prefix is used to make the conjunction, and it's usually translated as and. There are tens of thousands of vavs in Tanakh. In fact, in a traditional Torah scroll, there are 248 columns. Just the top of each column, all but 6 of them start with the letter vav. It's not always translated as and, sometimes you'll find it translated as but. There is a word for but, which is aval, but there are perhaps only 10 of those in the scripture, but you will find many other times that vav is translated as but. If you remember the meaning for the root letter of the meaning of the letter vav, it's a nail. And so this makes a lot of sense. A nail holds things together, and the vav holds ideas together. There are very few words that actually start with vav. A few foreign names like Vashti starts with vav. So it's not too confusing when you get to a word that starts with vav. It's probably going to mean and or but or some similar conjunction. There is one rule that I'm going to mention. I'm not really going to talk about it. This is the rule of the reversing vav or the vav conversive or some similar name. And what this means is when you have the vav before a verb, there are really only 3 tenses of verbs in Hebrew as we might look at tenses. English has 15 tenses, so Hebrew is very different in that respect. When the thing that we call perhaps the past, which is called the perfect, if it starts with a vav, the tense of the verb actually reverses to the imperfect. And if the verb is imperfect, we read it as the perfect. So the tense reverses. It's a very peculiar idea, and I'm not going to say that I have any idea about why Hebrew was arranged that way. I'm just bringing it to your attention. So now we're going to continue with a slideshow to see how these vavs are used in the text. Beginning in Bereshit Aleph, Genesis 1:1, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. And we see this highlighted vav, it means and we see the most common vowel underneath it, which is the shva. In the second verse, v'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech al pnei tehom v'ruach Elohim merachifet al pnei hamayim. So we see 3 out of the 4 highlighted vavs have the shva, and the other one has the kamatz. It's a little less common, but we do see it. It doesn't change the meaning, and the vav, of course, remains as a consonant. Moving to Pasuk Vav, the 6th verse of Bereshit Aleph. Vayomer Elohim yehi rakia b'toch hamayim vayhi mavdil ben mayim lamayim. So the first vav has the patach, also used a lot. And then we see on the second vav that it has a chirik, and it's followed by a yud. And this is very common where the yud would ordinarily have a shva if the vav wasn't before it. That shva disappears and that vav becomes a chirik. We'll look at several other examples of this. In Shemot, the 6th chapter, verse 11, Exodus 6:11. Bo daber el paro melech Mitzrayim, vishalach et bnei Yisrael me'artzo. So Yahweh's talking to Moses. He says, go to Pharaoh, who is a king of Egypt, and he will send. It would be the grammatical way for the he will send would be yishlach, but because of the vav before it, we see no vowel under the yud. We see the chirik under the vav instead. In Tehillim, Perek Mem Tet, chapter 49, in verse 10. V'chi od lanetzach lo yireh hashachat. Again, it should be Yechi, and he will continue to live, but because of the Vav, we lose the Shva under the Yud, and we see the Chirik under the Vav. In Yeshayahu, Parak Aleph, Pasuk Harishon, Isaiah 1:1. Hadavar asher chaza Yeshayahu ben Amotz el Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Usually when we see Yerushalayim, it has a Shva under the Yud, but because of the Vav, we see the Chirik under the Vav, and no vowel under the Yud. There are two cases where instead of the consonantal Vav, meaning and, we see the Shuruk, the vowel. This is the only time that a word will actually begin with a vowel, and the first example of that is when the next word, or the noun or verb that's going to follow the shuruk, the and conjunction, starts with a letter with a shva underneath it. So the first example is from Bereshit Aleph, Pasuk Yud, Genesis 1:10. We see two vavs that have a patach. They look kind of normal, even though there's a yud following them. We can recognize this is going to mean the conjunction and. And then we get to u lemikveh. Because lemikveh starts with the lamed, with the shva under it, we don't say v lemikveh, we say u lemikveh. It still means and. We don't pronounce it as a consonant. Remember, we never say vu when we see this. It's just u. Vayikra Elohim liyabasha eretz ulemikveh hamayim karayamim vayar Elohim ki tov. Here's a second example from Tehillim, Memvav, Pasuk Yud Aleph, Psalms 46, verse 11. We see the second verb there, de'u. The dalet has a shva under it, so we don't say v de'u, we say u de'u. Charpu u'de'u ki anochi Elohim arum b'gayim arum ba'aretz. The second case where you will see the vowel, the shuruk u, for the conjunction and instead of the consonantal vav, is when the word following begins with a bet or a pei or a mem. These are labial letters, and what happens in that case is that the dagesh will automatically drop from either the bet or the pei, and so you will automatically have vet. I guess you might have vav, would also be pronounced as a labial, and fei. The first scripture that you see on this slide is Shemot Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Shva Esrei, Exodus chapter 31, verse 17. Beni uven. This means between me and between Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. So this is something you can learn, that when the word between is used, it's used twice. Between me and between you. Between me and between the children of Israel. The bain there that has a yud, beni, between me, uvein, and between. And who is it between? The children of Israel. If we keep reading, we're going to see another interesting kind of spelling anomaly. Beni uvein bnei Yisrael ot he leolam. He means she, and it is usually spelled hey yud aleph, but sometimes it is spelled hey vav aleph, but it is always pronounced he. So that apparent vav there has no vowel and it has no sound. There is another vav, vav-as, and we see a normal kind of shva under that vav. It's a consonantal vav, and the land.
And then vayom, and on the day. So because of the vet of in or on the day, we have the vowel u to make and. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti la'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Yahweh et hashamayim v'et haaretz vayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash. Here are two examples of the shuruk with the mem. The first is from Shemot Shesh, Pasuk Esrim V'Shesh, Exodus 6:26. And we see it's talking about Aharon and Moshe. Because Moshe begins with a mem, it's not V'Moshe, it is U-Moshe. Hu Aharon U-Moshe asher amar Yahweh lahem, hotziu et b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al tziv otam. The second example is from Esther, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Arishon, Esther 1:1, and we see several vavs again as conjunctions. The first one, even though there is a yud with a shva, we can still recognize it. Remember, the purpose of this is for us to recognize these letters and how they're being used. We're not trying to predict. Nobody who is studying is going to write any more Hebrew scripture. We're going to maybe write in modern Hebrew. The rules will be different, but we want to be able to recognize what we're looking at. Vayehi. And it was. Va'ad kush. It's a normal looking conjunction, vav with a shva. Va-esrim, a normal looking one. And then we get to the Meah, and it has the shuruk, U-Meah Medina. Vayehi b'yamei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh hamolech mehodu, va'ad kush, sheva va'esrim U-Meah Medina. 127 provinces. Here we have some examples with the pei. Remember that the dagesh drops out. We will automatically get the sound fe. The first scripture is from Shemot Vav, Pasuk or Basre, Exodus 6, verse 14. And these are some names. The name of Reuben's son, which we see Palu in English. Here it's preceded by the and, the shuruk, the vowel sound u, falu. We get to his later son Carmi, and he just has the regular vav with the shva underneath it. Ela Rashi Veit Avotam Bnei Reuven Bechor Yisrael Chanoch Ufalu Chetzron V'Charmi Ela Mishpachot Reuven. The second example is from Tehillim Tet Vav. Remember, when we get to the number 415, we don't use Yud He 10 and 5 because it looks too much like the name. So we change the letters to 9 and 6. Tet Vav is 15. Pasuk Hashanit, the second verse. Psalms 15:2. And this is a verb. Poel means to work or to do something. And because it starts with a pei, when we have the and before it, it has the shuruk, the u, the vowel sound. Later on in the verse, there's a verb to speak. You know this verb, davar, dover. It starts with a daled. So the and, the conjunction that precedes it, is a vav with a shva under it. Holech tamim u fo'el tzedek v'dover emet b'livavo.
Okay, I hope that was helpful to you. And next time we'll look at how the vav is used as a suffix. In the meantime, Tasimite Nayim al Hashemayim, keep your eye on the sky. Your redemption draweth nigh. Shalom.